Most families think they are prepared for a blackout. They buy bottled water. They fill the pantry. They charge their phones. But after 30 days without electricity, those preparations begin to fail. The refrigerator is dead, the water system is useless, fuel is running low, and the cold is moving through the house. Amish families have a different approach. They do not prepare for one night without power. They prepare systems that can keep working when the grid does not. But one of those systems must be ready before the blackout begins, or the entire plan can collapse. For the next several minutes, we will follow the first 30 days without electricity from the perspective of an Amish household. We will look at water, food, heat, light, cooking, hygiene, and daily work. But we will also examine something most people forget. Having a full pantry does not necessarily mean you are prepared. My name is Levi Miller. What you are about to see is a narrative reconstruction based on traditional rural principles. Amish communities are not all identical, and practices can vary according to the community, region, and circumstances. But the problem is universal. When the power disappears, modern homes do not fail all at once. They fail quietly, one invisible dependency at a time. And the first dependency is usually discovered at the sink. On the first day, the family still believes it is waiting for the electricity to return. The house is dark, but it still seems to function. Water may still come from the tap. Food is still inside the refrigerator. Phones still have battery. The heating system may still hold some warmth. For a few hours, normal life continues as if nothing important has changed. That feeling is dangerous. In a modern home, many things depend on electricity, even when the connection is invisible. Water may depend on a pump. Heating may depend on electronic controls. Cooking may depend on an electric stove. Food may depend on a continuous cold chain. Even opening a garage door or turning on a light may become a problem. When I was a boy, my father never waited for the first winter storm to check the woodpile. He checked it while the weather was still calm. He made sure the wood was dry, that the roof above it did not leak, and that there was enough for more than one night. He checked the lanterns, the tools, and the water containers long before anyone was worried. At the time, I thought it was simply an old habit. Later, I understood that it was not a habit. It was a system. Preparation did not begin with fear. It began with routine. For a modern family, the first step is not buying 100 products. It is identifying the functions that depend on electricity. How will the family get water? How will it cook? How will it keep at least one room warm? How will it preserve food? How will it light the house? How will it maintain hygiene? How will it care for children, animals, or someone who is sick? If those questions have no answer, the family is not prepared, even if the basement is filled with boxes. During the first hours, the most important resource is not food. It is water. People often think about food first because empty store shelves create a more visible fear. But a family can survive for a while with simple meals. It cannot function for long without clean water. Water is not one resource with one purpose. There is water for drinking, water for cooking, water for animals, and water for washing or cleaning. Those supplies do not all require the same treatment, but they should not be treated as one undifferentiated reserve. Drinking water and water used to prepare food must be protected carefully. It should be stored in clean containers and treated according to reliable local health guidance. Water collected from rain, a well, or an unfamiliar source does not become safe simply because it looks clear. That distinction matters. A traditional method may be useful, but old does not automatically mean safe. The practical principle is separation. A household can keep protected drinking water separate from working water used for cleaning, washing, or animals. It can also use containers that are easy to carry, because stored water is not very useful if nobody can move it to the kitchen. Transportation is one of the details people forget. It is not enough to know where the barrel is. Someone must be able to carry the water, keep the containers clean, and estimate how much is being used every day. On the first day, a family may think in liters. After a week, it begins to think in buckets, shifts, and priorities. In a rural household, water is not used unconsciously. Every task has a physical cost. Cooking uses water. Washing dishes uses water. Cleaning an injury uses water. Caring for animals uses water. And once electricity disappears, each task also requires time. That is why the system must exist before the blackout, not after it. The second problem appears in the kitchen. During the first hours, most people open the refrigerator repeatedly to check the food. It is a natural reaction. but every opening releases some of the cold air. Once the power fails, the refrigerator becomes a countdown. Perishable food has to be organized intelligently. Some food is used first. Some may be preserved temporarily. Some must be discarded if it remains in unsafe conditions for too long. The objective is not to save every item at any cost. The objective is to keep the family from getting sick. The most vulnerable food is used first. Then the family moves to meals that require less energy to prepare. Eventually, it depends on dry goods, safe preserves, long-lasting vegetables, and food that does not require constant refrigeration. In my family, the pantry was never considered a room full of food. My father called it a calendar. Every jar had a place. Every sack had a purpose. Older food was placed in front, newer food behind it. As a child, I wanted to open the newer containers because they looked more interesting. My mother always sent me to find the older ones first. That rule seemed small, but it prevented a family from wasting food that had taken time and labor to produce. A pantry is not a pile of supplies. It is a system of temperature, moisture, ventilation, rotation, and cleanliness. If one of those parts fails, the food may spoil long before the family needs it. A cool storage room can be useful for certain foods, but not every product responds in the same way. Root vegetables, grains, preserves, and meat require different conditions. Some need darkness, others need ventilation. Some need controlled moisture. Putting food in a basement does not guarantee that it will remain safe for months. Storage depends on the product, temperature, humidity, container, and preservation method. During the first day, a modern household could divide its supplies into 4 groups. The first group would be food that needs to be used soon. The second would contain dry foods, such as grains, beans, and products that can be stored properly. The third would include foods kept under appropriate conditions, such as certain long-lasting vegetables. The fourth group would include seeds, animal feed, and materials needed to produce more food. That final category is what turns a pantry into a self-reliant system. A food reserve may last a month, but seeds, tools, and animals can help produce something after the reserve is gone. Self-reliance does not mean a family has everything. It means the family understands what it can store, what it can produce, and what it must learn to repair. At the end of the first day, the family still feels some control. The house is dark, but everyone has eaten. Water is available. The weather is not yet extreme. Most people still believe the situation will be uncomfortable but temporary. The second day changes that perception. The phone battery is falling, the house is colder. The food in the refrigerator can no longer be treated normally. And the family discovers that preparing a meal without electricity requires more work than expected. Cooking without electricity is not simply a matter of starting a fire. It requires dry fuel, a safe location, proper ventilation, suitable utensils, and a way to manage heat. This is where the main safety warnings belong. Combustion equipment can produce smoke or carbon monoxide. Indoor fire and heating require proper ventilation and suitable equipment. Unknown water must be treated according to reliable health guidance. Home canning requires tested methods, not invented measurements. Improvised electrical connections can cause fires. Traditional knowledge can teach discipline. It cannot replace verification, local regulations, or technical expertise. In many rural homes, heat is concentrated in one room. The goal is not to keep every room at the same temperature. The family reduces the area it uses and organizes daily life around one main space. Doors are closed. Drafts are reduced safely. Clothing becomes part of the heating system. Movement between cold and warm areas is limited. It is not comfortable. It reduces fuel consumption. When I was young, I learned that one warm room could matter more than an entire warm house. The family gathered there. Meals were prepared there. Repairs were made there. Conversations happened there too. Under normal conditions, every person wants private space. During a prolonged emergency, sharing one room can conserve wood, time, and energy. But it can also create tension. And this is where another resource appears, one rarely mentioned in survival lists: family discipline. During the first 3 days, everyone must learn a new routine. Someone checks the water. Someone prepares food. Someone monitors fuel. Someone cares for the animals. Someone keeps the living space clean. If everyone does everything, some tasks are repeated and others are forgotten. Rural systems depend less on one brilliant person than on a routine everyone can understand. By the third day, comfort begins to disappear. The phone battery is no longer a solution. Fast food no longer exists. Water does not arrive when someone turns a handle. The bathroom requires planning. Dirty clothes begin to accumulate. The family discovers that electricity does not only provide energy, it also removes hundreds of small tasks from everyday life. Without electricity, those tasks return. Hygiene becomes essential. A house can have food and water and still become unlivable if it cannot maintain basic cleanliness. Drinking water must have priority, but the family also needs a way to wash hands, clean utensils, and manage waste. The routine has to become simpler. Not everything can be cleaned as it would be on a normal day, but some things cannot be ignored. Visible dirt is unpleasant. Invisible contamination can be dangerous. A practical system separates clean water from waste and reduces the number of objects that need washing. It also groups work into batches. Instead of performing small cleaning tasks repeatedly, the family can group certain tasks together when doing so remains hygienic and safe. That is one difference between living without electricity for a weekend and living without it for 30 days. A weekend can be managed through improvisation. A month requires administration. By the fourth day, the family begins to count how much water remains, how much wood has been burned, how much food has been eaten, how many hours of light are left, how much fuel is needed to reach the end. A poorly calculated reserve can seem abundant at first, but if a family uses twice as much water, fuel, or food as expected, the difference grows quickly. The first days should be used for observation, not for pretending that life is continuing normally. The household can keep a simple record of drinking water, working water, food, wood, fuel, lamps, prescribed medication, animal feed, and tools. Each resource needs an estimated amount, a daily use, and an emergency threshold. The emergency threshold is the point at which the family stops using that resource normally and begins conserving it. A prepared household does not wait until a supply is empty to change its behavior. It changes when the reserve reaches a predetermined level. That simple decision prevents desperate choices later. During the first week, the question about food changes. It is no longer, do we have enough food? It becomes, can we turn this food into repeatable meals? Having grain is not the same as having an organized diet. Having flour is not the same as having enough fuel to cook it. Having seeds is not the same as having a crop ready to harvest. Having animals is not the same as having enough feed to maintain them. Self-reliance requires every element to connect. Food needs water. Water needs containers. Cooking needs fuel. Fuel needs safe storage. Animals need food, water, shelter, and attention. If one part fails, the rest of the system loses efficiency. Traditional rural systems are often valuable not because each object is special, but because objects serve more than one purpose. A container can store water. A pantry can preserve food. A tool can repair a structure. A room can function as a kitchen, dining room, and workshop. Efficiency comes from using what already exists well. Some channels present these practices as magical secrets. They are not. They are habits repeated for a long time. The real difference is that a family that practices regularly knows how much it consumes and how much it can produce. A family that has never cooked without electricity discovers its mistakes during the blackout. A family that has never carried water does not know how much effort it requires. A family that has never used a fuel lantern does not understand its risks. A family that has never opened a storage room in winter does not understand how moisture affects food. Practice reduces surprise. And reducing surprise may matter more than buying additional supplies. By the seventh day, the house enters a new phase. The family is no longer reacting to the blackout. It is living inside it. The first shock has passed. Now fatigue appears. The same tasks return. Water must be moved every day. Wood must be prepared. Meals must be planned. Animals cannot wait for the power to return. The family must sleep even when light is limited and the temperature is low. Fatigue changes decisions. Someone leaves a lamp burning. Someone uses more fuel than necessary. Someone forgets to close a door. Someone uses clean water for a task that could have used working water. The routine must be simple enough to function when everyone is exhausted. In my family, tasks did not depend on one person remembering everything. Some things were checked at sunrise, others after the main meal. others before the house was closed for the night. It was not a sophisticated list. It was repetition. Repetition turns a decision into a habit, and a habit requires less mental energy than improvisation. During the second week, the problem a full pantry cannot solve finally appears: the loss of routine. A family may have enough food and still begin to fail if nobody knows who handles each task, how much can be used, or when someone needs to rest. Health, hygiene, and morale become part of the survival system. A sick person may require more water. An injured animal may require attention. A small wound may become a serious problem if it is not cared for properly. Lack of sleep produces mistakes. Tension produces arguments. And arguments can stop a family from working as one unit. Preparation is not only storing objects, it is practicing communication. Who makes decisions? How are tasks divided? What happens when one part of the plan fails? Which supplies are reserved for a genuine emergency? Traditional Amish life is often associated with simplicity, but simplicity does not mean a lack of organization. In fact, a life with less technology may demand more attention to detail. When a machine does not do the work, someone must do it. When an app does not remember a date, someone must write it down. When a pump does not move water, someone must carry it. When a store is unavailable, the household must know what to produce, store, or exchange. That lesson can be adapted without copying an entire way of life. A modern family does not need to abandon electricity. It can learn to operate without it for a few hours. It can keep a water reserve. It can have food that does not depend completely on refrigeration. It can learn to prepare one simple meal. It can identify its safest heating option. It can keep flashlights and batteries in known locations. It can practice a communication plan. The goal is not to live permanently like a 19th century family. The goal is to avoid becoming completely helpless when one part of the modern system fails. By the 14th day, the reserves begin to reveal the truth. Food that seemed abundant is disappearing. The firewood occupied more space than expected. Working water was used faster than planned. Animals still need attention even when the family is tired. Small failures begin to accumulate. A door that does not close properly lets cold air inside. A container with a small leak wastes water. A broken tool slows several tasks. A poorly maintained lantern can become dangerous. In a home dependent on electricity, many problems are solved by buying a replacement part. During a prolonged blackout, the solution may take days or weeks. That is why hand tools and repair knowledge matter. Not because they are more modern, because they continue working when there is no power, internet, or open store. An old tool is not automatically better than a modern one, but a tool you can maintain and repair may be more useful than a sophisticated device that depends on one specific part. The question is no longer, what would an Amish family buy? The question is, what system continues to work when the thing we normally buy is no longer available? By the third week, the main problem is no longer surviving the day. It is conserving enough energy to reach the end of the month. The family must decide which tasks are essential and which can wait. The same amount of light is not used for every activity. Wood is not burned to heat empty rooms. A complex meal is not prepared if a simple meal feeds everyone. Water is not used for appearance when it must be reserved for an important need. This may feel uncomfortable to a person accustomed to modern convenience, but a prolonged emergency changes the meaning of comfort. Comfort no longer means having hundreds of choices. It means having a dry place, safe water, hot food, and enough rest. The person who maintains a normal routine consumes more resources. The person who accepts a simpler routine preserves them. This is why families who practice self-reliance may appear better prepared. They do not necessarily have infinitely more resources. They have learned to use less. Around day 21, the family begins to think about what happens next. If the power returns tomorrow, there is still work to do. The house must be cleaned. Water must be replaced. Food must be checked. Clothes must be dried. Tools must be repaired. Animals must be cared for. The family must evaluate what failed. An emergency does not end exactly when the lights come back. The system must be rebuilt. This is where records become valuable. After a difficult period, the family can write down what it actually used and what it miscalculated. How much water was consumed? How much wood was needed? Which foods lasted? What was wasted? Which tool was missing? Which task caused the most fatigue? Future preparation should be based on those answers, not on a generic list found online. My father used to review these things after every winter. He did not ask whether everything had gone perfectly. He asked what had caused trouble. A door that was not sealed properly. A sack stored in a damp place. A tool nobody knew how to repair. A reserve that seemed sufficient until a difficult week arrived. That is a practical way to improve. You do not try to build a perfect system. You build a system that learns. By the final week, the family is no longer counting only the days that have passed. It is calculating what still has to happen before the lights return. The supplies are not divided according to what remains. They are divided according to what is still required. This distinction is critical. A reserve can look generous until you subtract the remaining meals, the remaining cold nights, the water required for animals, and the fuel needed for cooking. The household now uses fewer lights, fewer movements, and fewer unnecessary tasks. The goal is not to preserve comfort at all costs. The goal is to preserve the ability to continue. The 30th day does not arrive with a celebration. It arrives with an evaluation. The family still has to rise, heat water, prepare food, and complete its daily work. But now it knows what it did not know on the first day. It knows how much each action costs. It knows which reserve disappeared first. It knows who can perform each task. It knows which part of the house holds heat best. It knows which foods were genuinely useful. And it knows that a full pantry by itself guarantees nothing. After 30 days, the lesson is clear. The strongest system is not the one with the most supplies. It is the one that can be repaired, repeated, and understood by everyone in the household. That is the difference between collecting things and building self-reliance. A modern family can apply part of this principle without abandoning its current life. It can keep a reasonable water reserve. It can store foods that do not depend entirely on refrigeration. It can learn to rotate the pantry. It can practice preparing one meal without electricity. It can review its heating options and understand their risks. It can maintain basic hand tools. It can reduce waste. It can grow something, even in a small space. It can learn to store seeds correctly. It can talk about what it would do if the power disappeared for one night, 1 week, or 1 month. The best preparation is not the most dramatic. It is the preparation a family can maintain all year. You do not need to buy a large shelter. You do not need to fill a room with products you have never used. You do not need to believe every old method is perfect, but you do need to understand your dependencies. If your water depends on a pump, learn a safe alternative. If your food depends on a refrigerator, learn what can be preserved another way. If your heat depends on one source, understand the risk. If your tools depend on batteries, keep hand tools and learn to use them. If all knowledge depends on one person, share the tasks with the family. The goal is not to reject the modern world. The goal is to stop being completely vulnerable when one part of the modern world stops working. The Amish do not possess a magical formula for living without electricity. What many of their methods reveal is something simpler and more difficult to maintain. A life organized around real resources: water, food, fuel, time, work, repair, community. When a family understands those resources, it can make better decisions. When it does not, an emergency turns every small problem into a crisis. 30 days without electricity would test any household. The difference is not who owns the most supplies. It is who knows what to do with them. It is who practiced beforehand. It is who can repair what breaks. It is who can work with less. And it is who understands that preparation does not mean waiting for a catastrophe. It means building a routine that continues when comfort disappears. In the next video, we will reconstruct the food storage system that can make that first month possible. We will examine which foods can be preserved, how a pantry is organized, and why the most important method is not buying more, but rotating what you already have correctly. Because before thinking about living 30 days without electricity, a family must learn how to preserve what it needs to reach day 30. And that lesson begins with something modern households often take for granted: water.